us last week. We took a little break, but now we're back. So, yes, I'm hoping that you missed us. Last week we took a little break, and now we're back. This week we have it's such a pleasure to welcome Dr. Shivon Belle-Jarvis, who is a pediatrician. She's the head of the pediatrics department at the Mount St. John's Medical Center. I am not going to spend a lot of time. I could give you lots of glowing intros and maybe a few anecdotal notes from our times at State College and New Ramona. But I won't do that. I will let Dr. Belle-Jarvis introduce herself and tell us, a little more about herself and what she does.
Good morning, Loretta. Good morning to your audience, and thank you so much for having me. It is indeed a privilege. Who is Shivon Belle-Jarvis? Well, a down-to-earth kind of girl, born right here in Antigua, from Casada Gardens. I'm definitely an advocate for change, a woman who loves to always put her best foot forward, but definitely a team player. Not leading from the front, but leading rather from the side. I'm one who really has a significant passion for children. I really want to see children always having the best start to life, because believe it or not, healthy children will result in healthy adults. I enjoy singing and the performing arts, because again, all work and no play will make Shivon Belle a dull girl. And so I love, if you know anything about me, you always will find me singing in either a group, at church, singing solos, and you will recognize that even in the pediatric department, we do from time to time have varying forms of performances. And so that is just from my nature of the love of the arts. I am a mother of two beautiful girls, 1 6 and 1 4. And I am the woman or the wife of one husband, and his name is Mr. Jarvis. So Loretta, I am pleased to be with you today, and let's start the conversation.
Great. Okay, so I and everyone who knows you for a long time can attest to, if when you think Shivon Belle-Jarvis, you think scholarly, you think scholar, you think dedicated, you think okay. Okay, great. We looks like
we
we're back.
lost each other a bit there. Yes, welcome.
Yeah, it looks that way. It looks that way. So, but tell us, when did you know what you wanted to do as a career path? Did you stumble onto it? Are you one of those people who knew really early what you wanted to do? Or did it walk us through that process? What made you decide to become a doctor?
Believe it or not, I've always been interested somewhat in the sciences. Even as a young girl, my brothers and I, would actually play with lizards in the yard. And even the pregnant lizards, believe it or not, we'd actually squeeze out their eggs to see what that whole process of birth was about. And so even as a young child, I was very much interested in life. Where did life come from and how can we make life better in my own simple way? And I remember one day my mother and I, we passed by a school by Golden Grove, and a tree was bent. It's a grown tree, but it's bent over. And my mother actually said to me, that tree would have been bent from since it was a young tree. And because it was never put back in its original position, it grew that way. And from then, even as a child, I recognized that changes that are made from very early up will continue if no changes are made. And so from then I said, you know what, I want to become a pediatrician, because if we can make the changes shortly after birth, and I'm putting it into perspective now, but if we can make the changes shortly after birth, then definitely the changes will continue as the child gets older. And so I knew that from the start that I wanted to be a pediatrician. My uncle was actually a physician, but that really had no form of impact on my decision. I opted to become a physician from very early. I think I lost you again, but I hope you followed.
I got the last 3 words. I got the physician very early.
Okay,
so if there was a
sentence
before, yes,
sure,
please.
I'll sum it up very quickly. So my brothers and I, we usually played in the yard. we love to play with lizards, and we somehow love to stimulate the birthing process. So we look for the pregnant lizards, we squeeze out the eggs so that we could just see what the birth was like. And then one day, while my mom and I drove along the road, we saw a growing tree right there by the Golden Grove School, and I'm sure if you pass there, it's still there today, that is actually bent. And my mom said to me, you know, that tree is actually bent because it was bent from a very early stage and nobody put it back up straight. And even in my young mind, I'm putting it together now. I'm saying, okay, so if we're able to make changes from pretty early, that means that those changes will follow the individual as they grow. And so from a child, I was always fascinated with other children and making other persons better. And that's why I'm a pediatrician today.
Okay, great. So your goal has always been fix it early,
Yes.
intervene early. If you
Intervene
catch
early,
it
catch it
early,
early, make a difference
catch it
early.
early.
Yes. And
Okay.
you would
Okay.
improve outcome.
What can you say, or what would you say has been the most rewarding element of your practice?
You know, for me, seeing the child and knowing the genuineness of children, a child who has come in ill, probably not being able to walk, talk, not playing, which of course is their natural being. You know, naturally as a child, you want to play, you want to explore. Seeing a child come in not being able to do those things and then rendering treatment to them, and at the end of their admission, they're able to run, jump, play, say, hi, doc, give you a nice hug or squeeze. That for me, it's priceless. Nothing can replace that. Seeing a child who likely would not have made it come back to you 5 years after and say, hi, doc, that for me is rewarding. Seeing the family, the whole experience of the family, the parents coming in very anxious, fearful, tearful, seeing them leave with a smile on their face, that for me is very rewarding. And you know, Loretta, I really think that irrespective of the career path that we choose, as I said, we always have to put our best foot forward. We always have to make a
Mhm.
difference. If you are in a workplace and nobody notices your absence, then something is wrong. That means that you're not giving a significant impact.
Indeed. Give me 1 second. My apologies. So definitely, I do also agree that if we are in a space and our presence is not missed when we leave, we were maybe not being as impactful as we could have been,
That's right.
or we're not making as many changes um, as we could have
That's
made.
right. And the thing about it, Loretta, is that, you know, unfortunately, that happens to many persons because the pathway that was taken in choosing a career might not have been the best thing. And so when we look at choosing a career, we really have to do some introspection. Look at yourself. What is it about me? Who am I? You know? So, for example, as a physician, am I someone who loves to interact? Or do I prefer to be one who is behind the scenes? That's something that you have to significantly consider. What is your personality? Am I somebody who is outgoing or am I somebody who is more reserved? Those are things that sometimes are not entertained when you're looking at what career path you're going to follow. You know, so we need to look at the intrinsic factors. What is it that I want to achieve? What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What are my skill sets? And then once you're able to recognize these factors, then you're able to optimize what needs to be optimized. So if, for example, I realize I want to become a doctor, but I'm a little weak in biology, then I'm going to get the extra help that I need. I, for one, am a person who I do not believe that because I have a weakness, I cannot do a particular career path. I believe instead that each person can be optimized, can be molded, and therefore brought up, you know, to the bar to step up to the within the career. The challenge is,
In, te-
Loretta,
in teaching, we call that a growth mindset. In teaching,
yeah,
we they have the fixed mindset. This is what I'm good at. This is what I do, and then there's the
correct.
growth mindset that even if I'm not so good at this, if I put in some more effort, I can make it better and I can achieve it.
That's it, Loretta, because guess what? Irrespective, if you have a plant, once put into the right environment, it will grow. What the problem is, many of us, our environments are not the right ones. And so even in the schoolings, in the educational system, a child is placed into a school that is thought to be high performing. If you're not getting the grades, you're asked to leave the school. But guess what? If the school were truly an excellent school, Loretta, I put it to you that they'll be able to mold any mind. And therefore, the excellence of the school should not be dictated by the excellence of the candidates entering. No. Instead, it should be able to mold any mind that it receives. Thus making
Oh boy, no,
excellence.
no, you're taking me down the
Oh,
education pathway, and you know, teaching is my passion. And
yeah,
one of the things I think that takes us down to is, and fundamentally, how we define success. Now, one of the things
yeah,
we laugh about is that there are only four career choices in the West Indies: is lawyer, doctor, engineer, accountant, and
exactly,
everything else that's a disgrace to family. Nobody want to hear you want to do anything else with your life.
exactly.
And
You know,
we see that. Like
and that's the
I can
thing.
tell you, being a teen,
Um,
and just looking even from
I mean,
registration perspective.
yes, because what we need to look at, okay, our success, as I said, you have to look at your intrinsic factors. Who are you? What are you bringing to the table? Then you have to look at your extrinsic factors. What is it that I want to achieve through this career? The problem is many of us focus a lot on the extrinsic factors. Who will people see me as? How much will I earn? Where is this going to put me in terms of status? But that really should not be the driving factor when choosing a career, you know? So I love to say the 5 no's. So you need to know who you are, right? You basically need to know what are your options, okay? My options in terms of a career, as I said, my uncle was a physician, but in no way did that guide my selection of my career, because my uncle is a physician does not mean, or even my father, which he's not, does not mean that I need to become a physician that best suits me, you know? So a lot of the times we focus on status, how much money, and basically familial and societal expectations, when really and truly those should not be the driving factors. Then you have to know your resources. Loretta, are you there?
I am here. Oh, I'm frozen.
Okay, because you're
My
frozen,
apologies.
but
Okay,
that's
yes, I'm here.
okay, good. And you have to know your resources. Coming back to my story, my family didn't have any money. My family did not have money, Loretta, right? So I knew I had to do, if I wanted to do medicine, I had to work extremely hard so that I could get a scholarship, you know? And for me, every person who is successful has had some form of failure. There's no
Mm-hmm.
failure. If you're going up a mountain, if you're going up a smooth mountain, guess what? It's not as easy as if you're going up a mountain that has some bumps that you're going to then use to move forward. For me, I would say, you know what? I didn't get the grade that I wanted in this exam. I'm going to push harder. I must get higher on the next. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
utilized competition as my driving force because my brothers, they did very well in school, right? The brother just before me, Branson, many persons may know him. He's an engineer now, so to speak, does microphysics. But he basically got 8 1s. I said, no, sir, he's not gonna do better than that I can do. I'm gonna do better. I have to do better. And so I made it my personal goal to do better than my brother and to always try to do better than I did on the last test, the last exam. And that for me was a driving force. Right? So remember we said you have to know yourself, who you are intrinsically, what is happening around you extrinsically. So what is your environment? You have to basically know what your options are. Many times, especially for persons who like enter state college or even in terms of
Okay.
third form,
I'm
where they
having a
change,
little bit of connectivity issues today. I guess it's the weather.
but that's fine. Once you're following, so I was saying that you have to basically know your options, you have to know yourself, and you have to be one who is motivated. I was saying that I was motivated by my brother because I basically used his success to push me forward. He's not going to beat me as my brother or as a man because girl power, that sometimes it is thought that we may not do better than, but we're saying that we are equal to, and we also can excel in the fields that we choose. And so I opted to do better than my brother did. I opted to also do better. Whatever exam I took, I had to do better in the next one, right? And so we have to know our options, we have to know our resources. And so if your family doesn't have money, it doesn't mean that you cannot excel. Let persons recognize that you are an outstanding candidate, and they will therefore push you to do what you need to do. You understand? So
Let me
sometimes
just take a minute to acknowledge one of our guests. Thank you, Charles, for your contribution. Charles says, great discussion. If you're watching, please feel free to interact with us. We check our comment section. If you have questions or comments, please feel free to put them in the chat, and we'd love to get back to you. So this is an interactive session.
yes, please. I love questions actually. Right. So you have to basically know what it is that you are able to do, what your resources are. And I knew that my family did not have money. So if I were to excel, I definitely would have to do well so that I could get a scholarship. And that's fine. Sometimes many of us, if we can't get a scholarship, we have to work first. And that is also fine. Which brings me to the next point of knowing your limitations, Loretta. Sometimes we know limitations, but we do not acknowledge them. If you do not know what your limitations are, then there's no way that you're going to overcome them, right? You have to acknowledge them and try to work with them. For me, physics was a challenge, I'll tell you. You know, doing medicine, you really should have at least 2 of the science subjects, so biology, chemistry. I opted to do the 3, biology, chemistry, and physics. And physics used to give me a hard time. Believe it or not, when I did physics first, I got an E, Loretta, an E. I was devastated. I'm like, this cannot be happening. I usually excel. What's going on here? And I said, you know what? Physics, this is not going to overtake me. I'm going to overcome. And so basically I went online, I found every resource that I could. I spoke with a lecturer, Mr. Ross at the time at State College. I tried to dig up every past paper that I could because it was my determination that I was not going to get an overall failing grade for physics. And in the end, I ended up with a B, right? Which means that yes, the E would have pulled me down, but I was able to, by God's grace, pull it up to get to the performance level of a B. So Loretta, trust me, failure, as I said, is always there. You know your limitations. You try to see how you can best get help to overcome those limitations, because any person who is successful, who says to you that they've never experienced failure, something is not quite right with that story.
That means somebody gave them all the success they have.
Exactly. And I really was not born with a little gold spoon in my mouth. And true, as I said, always put your best foot forward. It's not all about you either. You have to really work as a team. Many times, some reasons why we do fail is because we try to get ahead of the game and make it all about us as individuals. But you'll be so surprised that when you help to strengthen and empower others, you're actually empowering yourself. So when I went into the postgraduate arena, I would have done my postgraduate studies at the University of West Indies, Mona. One of the things I learned as a physician entering specialization program was that teaching others was actually empowering. So what they used to say to us, if you cannot teach somebody, then you do not know the concept. And so basically, Loretta, are you there? Seems like you've gone again. But basically, I used to just get the junior students and teach them. And in teaching them, I would recognize, hey, I don't really know this topic as well as I should. And it would prompt me to therefore go back, review the topic, and then teach again. That way it would solidify in my mind what I needed to know. Are you there, Loretta? Okay, I think we might have lost Loretta, but feel free to ask any questions until she rejoins. So I'll just continue to tell you about my story until she comes back. So I found it very empowering to teach others, because once you're able to teach others or help others along the way, it really improves what you know and who you are. And in doing so and having a team player approach, then it definitely led to improved success for me. You know, being a physician sometimes can be overwhelming. Okay, I think Loretta is coming back, so I'll wait for her. Welcome back, Loretta. The internet is really giving you a hard time today. Can you hear me?
Anyone else can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Definitely. Hello? I can hear you, Loretta.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear me?
Okay, great. Great. Okay.
Great. So where
You're
did you...
breaking up a little bit too. Oh, okay, great. I see.
Hi, Loretta.
I see.
Okay, we can hear you. I can see you. I can hear you. Can you hear me, Loretta?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. Okay,
Yes,
great.
we're back on.
Okay,
Good.
you're back
So
on.
I'm not sure where I lost you, but I was saying that, empowering others can also help to empower you as an individual. So in graduate study, what they actually said to us is that if you cannot teach a topic, then you don't know the topic. So
Mm.
specializing, what we actually used to do is to actually gather the junior students and we would teach them. And in empowering them, when you're teaching a subject, you'll say, wait, I don't really know this concept very well. That means I need to go back to the books. And so empowering them as junior students, we were able to also empower ourselves. And so the message there is very clear. We have to be willing to help others along the way. And that's why a leader is not someone who is just, saying, do this, do that, or pulling, or pushing from the back or pulling from the front. You're working side by side, looking at each member of your team, striving to empower them, and then you move forward together. So again, reaching out to others and helping is very important in the whole pathway of success and even in terms of your career, optimizing your career.
Definitely, definitely. Um, so here's a question that I want you to think about.
Mm-hmm.
If you could go back and have a conversation with Shivon at the beginning of med school,
Yes.
what piece of advice, maybe is the beginning of med school too young? Okay, the Shivon at the beginning of her practice as a doctor.
Yes.
What
Yes.
piece of advice? It could be two pieces of advice would you give her?
I think you could actually go back to the beginning of med school, and I learned this lesson probably the harder way. But guess what? Universities and even places of employment, they're not only looking for someone who is just scholarly, they want someone who is well-rounded. And so the Shivon that started medical school was really striving to keep on top of things in terms of the books. But the Shivon back then needed to be more rounded. I definitely was a bit more rounded in high school coming up. I attended at Seventh Adventist school. But when I got into university, then several, co-curricular activities sort of dropped off the plate. But when I got to university, I stayed on the Mary C. Cole Hall, and I was made aware that you're not going to be able to live here longer than a year if you don't participate. And so
If you're a lump, you can't live on if you're a lump.
Okay, so I utilize what the Lord blessed me with. And again, that's why you have to look at yourself and know your skill set. I utilize my voice and I strive to really look and see, okay, what are the platforms that would make me be seen enough to be seen to be active, but yet to not take away from the work that I need to do. Because sometimes when we start off, yes, we set goals, but we overachieve to the point that we can't manage. So again, we have to be very good in terms of our goal setting. So I then became more rounded. I was running, Loretta, I would do 5Ks and so on. I was even asked to join the UWI team, mind you. Okay. I was singing, I was participating in performances, and then I recognized that I got a different energy that way. I was more rounded. I had times when my brain was relaxed and I was able to do better in school. I was able to socialize better with others. And then I even took up other leadership positions outside of medicine. And so in your career, never be overconsumed by it. Instead, utilize other opportunities to make you a more holistic person. When you fill out that application, when persons look at your resume, yes, they're looking at the scholarly activities, but they want to see this individual who's well-rounded. And believe it or not, I lived on the Mary Seacole Hall for 5 years. All of my 5 years in medical school, Loretta, I lived on the Mary Seacole Hall, not because of scholarly activity, but because of my co-curricular activity. So I want persons to know that the advice I'd give the Shivon Bell back then is that I should have been more rounded from earlier on in my career. And then moving onwards, time management. Time management and goal setting, those two are very key. Because guess what? You may want to achieve the world of things, but if you take too many things on your plate, guess what? Something is going to suffer. And so you have to have in mind what realistic goals are as you strive to become successful. And so those are the two things. Be well-rounded.
The power of saying no, strategically saying no.
Yeah, you have to be able to say no. Don't be afraid of offending somebody by saying no. Have a schedule. So for me right now, I use the app on my phone. Whenever I have any appointments, everything, I put it in. So I can have an idea. I plan a month ahead. What works for you may be different. You may have to plan 2 months ahead or maybe 2 weeks ahead if your schedule is not that busy. But plan ahead and have realistic expectations. Goal setting is very important when it comes to career path. You have your 5-year goals and you have your 10-year goals. And guess what? You may not be able to achieve everything in the 5-year mark, but strive to achieve at least most of them. And then the other thing that is, Loretta, not necessarily what I would change, but what I would encourage persons to do is to consult. Always consult with persons who have gone before. If they have gone, they've trod the road already. So why are you going to reinvent the wheel? Ask them the challenges. And that's why this importance of this conversation today. So persons can see, okay, where did you fall short? What would you do better? You know, if should I do biology, chemistry, and physics? What subjects do I really need if I want to do medicine? Okay, so you really have to start having a conversation from early. I think we've lost Loretta again, but again, put your questions in the chat or let us know your questions so that we can answer them. And while she's away, I'll speak to the whole issue of your resume. Now, when you're putting together your resume, it's not that you're selling yourself per se, but you have to make yourself attractive. Okay, welcome back, Loretta. I was just continuing to talk. I was saying we probably should just look a little bit at the resume because sometimes some persons really are not clear as to the resume. You're not selling yourself, but you're making yourself attractive. Why would Loretta or why would Shivon be the appropriate candidate for me? What would she be an asset? Or would she end up being a liability? So you really need to put forward, you know, yes, your scholarly activities. You need to put forward your co-curricular activities. If in terms of medicine, they're very impressed by, you know, this whole issue of humanism, volunteering, research work, very important, you know. So you have to look at what is required and then you try to see, okay, what can I bring to the table? I always encourage young professionals as well to have a professional photo. Have a formal photo that you can use. So that for me, exactly, lovely, not over the top, not overdone with makeup, no long eyelashes batting and loud jewelry, something very modest. You know, so when they see this person, they say, yes, this person is exuding confidence. This person, you know, looks so pristine. This person will be a good asset for a company. And so for me, that's another thing I learned as I went along, because I never had a professional photo, Loretta, until I went to St. Jude Children's Research Center in March of this year. Because usually, you know, when you have your applications, they want to see, you know, who it is that you are, and you have this little photo that you take with your phone. No, no, no. Come, we're doing this thing professional now. Have a professional photo that you have put down. that when you have anything to do, you just submit that photo. That's your go-to photo, right?
I got
And
my first professional
you
headshot this
know,
year too.
exactly. And that is something that you learn sometimes as you go along the way. So for me, on my resume now, I have my headshot, Loretta. So anybody who is, and they're seeing me for me. They're seeing me as a confident woman who is ready for the game. You know what I mean? You have to come when
Mhm.
you come to the table, you have to lick it for six, Loretta. You can't be thinking you're gonna hit a 4 or 1 run. You have to lick it for six. Because guess what? The
Mhm.
now is very competitive. Having 10 sexy subjects is nothing anymore. I have 9 ones and a 2. That is nothing compared to anybody now anymore. You're talking about 14 and 20 something subjects now, Loretta. Please, those subjects pale in comparison to what is happening now on the international market and the regional market. A first degree for many persons, that's
It's
like
like a high school diploma.
a high school diploma right now. Many persons have
Everyone.
2 masters, they have a PhD. And I'm saying to you, look at what it is that you can strive to achieve. I mean, you don't have to have a master's to be successful, because we're saying, again, we're trying to ask persons to instead optimize the skill set that they have and be the best that they can be in the field of choice. But we're just, saying that the field right now is very competitive. Medicine is
Globally
saturated.
competitive. It's global competitiveness
Exactly,
now.
exactly. Right now, being a physician, a general practitioner, that field is saturated. Right now, in Antigua and Barbuda, we have about 6 to 7 pediatricians. Right now, being a general pediatrician, the field is saturated. You need to go higher. You need to subspecialize. But for me, guess what? You have to balance the game as well, because I'm a mother. I participate in church. I'm a teacher in church. I have my responsibilities at work. I have my co-curricular activities. So you have to be able to be balanced. And there has to be self-care, Loretta. You as a professional
How
person
do
can
you achieve that? Telling us all
you,
that. How do you
you
juggle all these competing responsibilities?
it's rough, because sometimes I'm wondering if I'm going to drop one of the balls. But you have to take the time, even in terms of your health. You cannot perform maximally in any career if you're not along the path of health. And so that comes down to making the right choices from early. So again, having a schedule, trying to prioritize your time. Sometimes my children do say, especially the older ones, she'll say, Mommy, you're too busy. And so having persons to whom you are accountable for also helps you to have a check as to what you do. And again, setting your timelines, not being unrealistic and not taking on too much.
Time
That's
management. So it comes
that's
down to time
correct.
management. Time
And again,
management, accountability, priorities.
correct. And ensure that you have persons outside of yourself to whom you have to be accountable. And so once I look at my husband's face, I can tell, no, you're doing too much. You need to scale it back a bit. And you may have persons in your immediate circle to whom you can be accountable. You know what I mean? Because sometimes when
Mhm.
we're in it, we actually don't see what is happening, but having that external feedback, having your support system as well, there's no way that I could do what I'm doing now without the help of my husband, and as old as I am, the help of my parents. Family is so
Mhm.
important. Guess what? At the end of your career, your family will be there. So that support group, family or friends, they're very important.
So I have a question here from Miss Carolyn King, and she
Mhm.
asks, "What do you mean by subspecialize?"
Okay, sure. So generally, after you're finished 5 years of medical school, you are a general practitioner. So basically, you'd have your Bachelor's of Medicine, Bachelor of Surgery, so your MBBS if you go through the UE system, or you may just be called an MD. Basically, you're a doctor. Okay, so at the end of that, you do an internship, which for many places that can range between 1 to 2 years. So that's 6 years. And then after that, you specialize. So you can decide to do pediatrics, medicine, surgery, obstetrics, the main areas of medicine. And then you can do what is called subspecialization, where you then take a closer look at a particular aspect in your field. So I can become, for example, a pediatric nephrologist. So I
Mm.
see children and focus on the kidneys. I can become a pediatric pulmonologist. I focus on the lungs, yes, but on the lungs in children. I can become a pediatric neurologist. I focus on the brain, but of the brain in children. I can become a neonatologist. So I'm a physician who deals with children, but my emphasis would be on babies in the first month of life. Okay, so you can continue to go on. So becoming a pediatrician, that is not the end all and be all. There's so much more for me to blossom in terms of my career. But again, you have to get the balances, because right now my children are young. So my priorities have been shifted to ensure that my children have that good background or good, foundation, so that they can do better than what I am able to do now. And as a mother, that is something of primary importance, right? So again, Loretta, priorities. You have to set your priorities.
Priority. Okay, so I think Carolyn thinks that you answered her questions. I see a positive response from her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we have a couple of minutes, like let's say maybe 2, 3 more minutes. Oh, I would just like to have you tie up. If there's one thing you would like someone to take away from your presentation, what would that be?
Loretta, I think we've lost you again. I think we've lost you, but I am going to foresee that she's saying, okay, you're coming back. You're coming back, Loretta, but while you do, there's a quotation that I love so much, and I'm hoping that our viewers can still hear me even while
And
Loretta
I'm
is
back.
joining. Ah, okay, I see you're back. I was just
Great.
talking in the meantime. I was actually sharing, I was trying to foresee your question, which I believe is, wrapping up what is that main point that I want persons to take.
One thing you'd want everybody to walk away with from our conversation today.
For me, there's a quotation that I love, and this is by Ellen Johnson. And just to summarize it, she basically says, if your dreams don't scare you, it's because they're not big enough. And for me, even as a child, I used to dream, Loretta. I used to see myself, standing on a platform, giving lectures, receiving awards, just being an outstanding citizen in Antigua and Barbuda. And those were dreams back then. But for me, as I progress on a daily basis, for me, they're becoming reality. I really would want us as persons living within Antigua and Barbuda to always be advocates for change, to always strive to do something better. So I think that's the one thing I'd want us to take away. Always strive to be better. I think we've lost us again. Always strive to do something better than you did the last time. And if you do that, then you will become successful. Remember that you're never alone. You can always reach out to a professional within your field of choice, and they will guide you. They will guide you, because anyone who basically wants the best for others will in no way withhold the difficulties, the successes, so that you can do better than they did. For me, I want to see our young persons coming up in Antigua and Barbuda and making a difference, not only locally, but internationally. And of course, I have to congratulate Loretta for doing such an excellent job. I'm seeing that she's back, but we're not seeing her. So yes, Loretta, I don't know if you heard what I've shared, but I shared my quotation, so I think you heard that. And basically I'm saying always strive to be better, always strive to be an agent of change, always strive to stand out, So again, you have to be, you're not being a thorn in somebody's flesh, but rather you're being that rose among the thorns, that person who stands out, that person who's going to make a difference for the company, for your field of choice, for Antigua and Barbuda, and you're going to stand out as a citizen of Antigua and Barbuda and even beyond. So I think, Loretta, I think that sums it up. And of course, I'm going to just repeat the 5 no's. Remember that you have to know yourself. Remember that you have to know your options, know your resources, know your limitations, and remember that you're not alone. We as persons who have walked the path already and we're still walking the path, we're always available and willing to guide. So I make the appeal. If you are interested in doing medicine, in doing pediatrics, I am open to having a conversation with you. I'm open to guiding you so that you can have the perfect subject choice, and so that you can also learn from my mistakes, from my successes, so that you can be the best you, and so that you can do better than I have even ever been able to do. And with that, Loretta, I think that's a wrap, unless you have any questions. But I will be happy to be on this platform again, because it's so important to share the challenges that we do have, the successes, so that persons can do better. Thank you so much for having me.